Welcome, everyone, to Season 8 of the Gather Influence podcast, inviting women of faith across the globe to rise in purpose and influence your world with real conversations, bold words, and whole hearts. My name is Kim Hutchins, your Season 8 podcast host, along with my co-host, Kathy Ostapchek. We are so glad you're here. We want to start by thanking our Season 8 sponsor, Global Aid Network, revealing hope and restoring life. Global Aid Network is revealing hope by sharing God's unconditional love and restoring life by demonstrating the gospel through compassionate action to those who are living in poverty, injustice, and crisis around the world. Please check out the amazing work they do globally at globalaid.net. Our theme for Season 8 of the podcast is Who Told You No? And we're sparking transformative conversations to make a positive impact in our nation and the world. You will love our conversations with the amazing women who will share their real and inspiring stories of their leadership journeys. We are here to come alongside you to connect, equip, and mobilize you as the female church in Canada and beyond. And want you to see yourselves in the lives of the women you hear on the podcast. And today I'm excited to bring you Nelly Latchman. We dive right into our conversation of who told you no and who told you yes. I think you'll love hearing what she has to say. Let's get started. Welcome, Nelly. I'm so excited to get a chance to talk to you and to finally meet you. We've been going back and forth on email for a little while now. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
That's great. And you are a woman who does many things. We were just chatting about that briefly, and there are so many exciting things that you do and that you help others with. And you're a pastor. So could you give me like a little, or can you share with everybody things that you do and your roles?
For sure. So I say that I wear a lot of hats, and on the podcast, I know if you're listening to the audio, you're not seeing this, but I'm not wearing a hat. And it kind of hurts me every time I say it, I'm not wearing a hat.
I wish you would have, right?
No. But I wear a lot of hats. One of them being the young adult pastor at Parkwood Gospel Church here in Windsor, Ontario, which is up my heart. I love it. Post-secondary students, young adults, that is my thing for forever, probably.
Yeah.
And so young adult pastor, I also moved out here to be a Mission Canada worker. So with Pentecostal Assemblies of Canada, basically as a homebound missionary. So similar way that we send missionaries across seas, we know that there's some gaps within our own country and specifically on the university campus.
Okay.
So that's my mission field. And so I run a program on campus called Red Frogs. It's a support network that focuses in harm reduction, sexual assault prevention, and mental health support to university college students who are studying and becoming who they're going to be for the rest of their lives. So that's 1, 2, and then another hat that I wear is I run a house called ZOE Manor. It's a mentorship house. So I have students, young adults who live with me, and I get to help them figure out budgeting their life, budgeting their finances, faith, how it all works together, and developing character while they're studying their post-secondary life.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, a couple things.
Yeah.
Those are the 3 big hats.
The 3 big hats, yes. And next time you'll wear a hat, that'd be great. Well, Nelly, we're going to talk this season. We've been talking about who told you no, but also who told you yes. And so we're going to start with a season that was hard for you, that you were going through as a leader. And then, what happened during that season and who told you no?
When I heard this question, I thought automatically of like my beginnings in coming to Windsor. And so I grew up in the GTA, and the church that I grew up in, I was serving in high school and youth and junior high ministry, went off to Tyndale for school. And while I was at Tyndale, both of my youth pastors had left for ministry elsewhere. And I ended up kind of stepping into a leadership role that I was kind of prepared for, being one of their leaders, but also while a student at Bible College. And so in that time, they were hiring for youth pastor, junior high pastor, but I really felt from the beginning of my call to ministry that it was to post-secondary students, to the university campus, and to young adults. And so while I'm helping, stepping in with this role, I needed it to be clear. This is just how I am, how my personality works, how me and God works. And I was like, I needed to be something specific to know that it was for real. But I had a moment where I was like, well, I'm serving in junior high and I love these students. I've grown up with them. I've watched them grow up and I love them so much. So I applied for the job to be the junior high pastor at the church that I grew up in, and I didn't get it.
Okay.
But I also knew that if I got the job, it would keep me in Brampton, in GTA, where I lived. It would potentially deter me from going off to post-secondary like ministry, like on the university campus. And I needed it to be a for sure thing from God, that that's what he wanted me to do. So as much as I didn't get the job, I was told no then. I knew if I had gotten it, I wouldn't have gone off to do what I am doing now.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Isn't that amazing? And that's God definitely was redirecting you and showing you, no, I kind of want you over here. Right. But I bet you, did that come with some hard conversations? And how did you wrestle through that?
Oh yeah, I definitely cried.
Right? Sometimes a good
Like,
cry is all we
definitely
need.
cried about it. But I still like I started at 16 praying this prayer. God, would you open one door, open the doors you want to open, close all the doors you want to close, make this so obvious that I can't mess this up.
Oh, wow.
And
That's a
so
great
since I
prayer.
was 16, it was like, just close what you got to close and open what you got to open. And so this was one of those moments where I prayed that prayer and it was like an obvious no, door shut in the face, like in a kind enough way, but
Yeah.
nonetheless, with the person who was my boss at the time, right? Who's like, we love you, we know what you do here, like we appreciate you, but we think in this time we need to go in a different direction. And it was them and their leadership, but also me and listening to God that kind of came together in that
Yeah.
decision.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. And then, so you made it to Windsor. Like, how did you end up in Windsor?
Yeah. So in this time, 16, growing in my faith becomes real for the first time. And I
Yeah.
feel like I'm called to ministry. I'll let you know that I never like had ministry on my like list of potential careers.
Hmm.
It was never like, yeah, this is an option. It just was not even in my frame of mind or reference. I don't come from a line of pastors. I'm like second generation Christian. I was going to be a doctor, an
Okay.
OBGYN in
Oh,
specific
wow.
was my plan, to bring life into the world is what I used to say. And obviously God has something else planned. But when I was 16, growing in my faith, feeling like God's calling me to ministry, I said, God, if this is really you, I have some stipulations before I said yes to your call. I was like, if this is really you, give me something I've never heard before. Take me outside the walls of the church and break my heart for something I've never noticed.
Wow.
And over the rest of high school, that's exactly what he did. I was like, all right, God, I give you my dream in return of, I don't know what you're going to give me, but I'm just going to trust that you have something. Then you're going to show me within these three stipulations. And it was through the rest of high school that I started to notice my friends who would graduate out of youth group and go off to post-secondary, the amount of them that were falling away from their faith.
Yeah. It's
People that
huge.
I grew up with at church, saw
Yeah.
every weekend of my life, and it just broke my heart. I was like, God,
Mhm.
what is happening there? Like, why is there such a drift after high school into post-secondary world? Like, why do people fall away from faith right there? And that, like, my heart just broke. And later we'd have a guest speaker come to our church, and all he did was introduce himself. I don't remember what his message was on, but it changed my life forever because
Wow.
he was the campus pastor at a Bible college. And in his introduction, he said that he was a campus pastor. And I was like, that's a job? You can do that? Like, that's it? And then I started to realize, well, okay, it makes sense if he's doing that at a Bible college. What about the schools that my friends are going to and getting lost at?
Yeah.
Who's pastoring them? And it was in that night that the thing my heart was broken for, that I'd never heard of, that was outside the walls of the church, all came together.
Wow.
And so that's how I was like so certain it was campus ministry, young adults, post-secondary students. And
Yeah.
yeah.
That's amazing. And so we all have people in our lives, and I want to jump into the conversation of who told you yes, right? Was there somebody that opened a door for you after that conversation for you to get into this, or how, that lifted you up in prayer or surrounded you? So how did you move forward into this new calling?
Yeah. So my previous boss, the guy who brought me to Windsor, basically, I had met him in that teenage time where my
Mhm.
youth group came to Windsor on a short-term urban mission trip.
Oh,
So we
wow.
spent the weekend here. We served at the church. They did like Friday night dinners and service on the Saturday. And we helped to create a community garden out of a vacant lot and clean up and stuff like that. And in that time where I was leading the youth group and stuff at my church, I said, well, that was so impactful to me. Let me also bring this group back to that same space. So I kept up that connection with that pastor here. His name is Kevin Rogers.
Okay.
And he, like, we used to make the joke that he was my agent, like in the way, like, he was supposed to be my boss, but he'd be like, no, I'm not her boss. I'm her agent. I work for her.
That's
And he
funny.
really, really did. He made sure that when I got here, made all the connections that I could, hooked me up with different pastors to say, to like promote my ministry, and then to also do the fundraising piece, because that on the Mission Canada side of things, it is a fundraising role.
Yeah.
Made sure that I made connections here and made Windsor feel like home.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Right? Especially moving to a new city.
Yes.
Right. So, wow. And then now here you are today, leading so many different things, right? And did you ever anticipate that this was the plan that God was going to map out for you? Or do you think that, this is somewhere that you never imagined would be possible? And did that surprise you?
Definitely a surprise. In giving God my dream to be a doctor, in exchange taking on the ministry thing,
Mhm.
the doctor dream I had planned up till retirement. Like
Wow.
I knew what I wanted to do. I knew like the pieces. I didn't know who was going to marry or those pieces, but they were all in the plan, right?
Yeah.
I had it down to retirement. And this is much different than that. This is like a day by day, a month by month kind of, okay, God, where are we going now? What are we going to do now?
Mhm.
What doors are you going to open? What doors are you going to close? How it's really like trusting God to do what he's going to do.
Mhm. Yeah. Wow. And so what effect have the last couple of years had on you? Right? Like it's been such a trying season. We are been exhausted, right? Maybe now a time of healing. And so tell me about these past couple of years for you.
Yeah. So the pandemic,
Yeah.
that happened.
Yeah.
What we do on campus. So this job at Parkwood is actually only 2 years now. So this came out of the pandemic. But when I moved here to Windsor, Red Frogs was my whole thing.
Mhm.
And being on campus, serving students during Frosh Week, walking them home from parties, making sure they get home safe, to, holding their hair back while they're throwing up in the grass and telling them, hey, it's okay, we're here for you, you're going to be all right. Handing out hot chocolate during exam season, or free coffee while they're studying. So that's kind of what that was. Very in person, very personable, very like, we are in contact with people.
Yeah. Relational, right?
Mm.
Mhm.
So when we have to social distance, when we have to use masks and like all this stuff, words we haven't used in the last 2 years,
Yeah.
um, I was really like, God, if I can't do the thing that you've called me here to do, Red Frogs, right? Then like, what can I do? How can I serve these students? If they're not on campus, how am I a campus pastor? Like that doesn't like,
Yeah.
God, how am I going to do this? And I had a little bit actually of an identity crisis. I say
Mhm.
in my Instagram bio that I love Jesus and I do stuff. But I kind of forgot about the love Jesus part and was really focused on the doing stuff part.
Okay.
And in that time, I really had to come back to loving Jesus and doing that
Mhm.
first. Because having the Red Frogs piece kind of taken away, not being able to do it in its fullness, I was like, God, what am I here for? What did you call me here for? What are we supposed to do here? Do I move home? Like, and he just
Yeah.
had to show me himself in that time. So it was really cool in a way now that I'm on the other side of it. In the moment, definitely not.
I know
Um,
in the moment it's so hard, right?
yes, it really felt like the dark night of the soul those months. But on the other side of it, I was seeing how God was using that time to just refine me and to help me hear his voice again and say, like, he was the one that called me, and not the things that I do, but who I am because of who he says that I am.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. Who you are because of who he says you are. What a great line. And when you think about your journey, like your story being written by God and you being obedient to his promptings, how do you think about what's God's part and like what's your part, right? How would you define that?
I'd say my part is just to like sit in surrender and obedience,
Mm-hmm.
because I've learned when I do the opposite, when I'm trying to control the show, when I'm trying to, do God's will my way, it doesn't work out.
No.
So I've learned, and I'm learning how to trust God in that, and how to just be at his feet, to be his child, to just sit with him and say, okay, God, you open the door and I'll walk through.
Yeah. Wow. And was there ever a time when God was calling you to do something and asking you to say yes, and you were like, I just want to say no? Right?
Definitely the move to Windsor. So
Yeah.
I had like grown up in the GTA. My whole family was there, my support system, my friends, everything that I had known. And the place that we came to serve in Windsor is not the most glamorous area.
Okay.
Think of the like least glamorous part of your own city, and that is exactly where I came. And so I had this like view of what all of Windsor was like based on that one little spot that I
Oh
had.
no.
I was like,
Yeah.
God, really there? And I had taken a train down from Brampton all the way to Windsor. And on the way back, a time I had come to for some meetings. Pastor Kevin had like set some stuff up. I had come down for some meetings. On the train ride back, I was like, God, really? Windsor? Like, are you sure? And he said, I wouldn't have brought you this far for nothing. And I was
Wow.
like, man, I'm moving to Windsor. But it was the next like year that that I'd end up moving here. I had to finish my last year at school. And in that time, I felt like I was going through a season of isolation, which
Okay.
isn't fun, definitely not. But if I didn't go through that time, I wouldn't have been prepared to do what it was that I had to do here. Because when I moved out here, I really was alone. And I really was just me and God and, my boss. But I wasn't about to call him up on a Tuesday night and say, hey, want to go watch a movie?
Yeah. Yeah, right, 'cause any
Like
friends or
build a
support?
new community altogether. And
Yeah.
I actually did that at Parkwood Young Adults. I just started to attend here as a young adult myself, to make friends and find people. And later on, the door would
Yeah.
end up opening for a job. So that's some of the way that God masters orchestrates things together.
Yeah, and so was your family supportive?
Yeah.
Okay.
My mom, she's first generation Christian. And so in her, teenage years when she found Jesus, she just had those prayers of like, oh, I wish my kids would love the Lord. And I pray that, maybe one day they would be involved in church. And so when I told her, she was like, this is amazing. My
Oh.
dad was very much on the dad side and like, so how are you going to live? How are you going to make money? How are you going to eat?
Right, they're
um,
practical. Yes.
Yes. And so
Yeah.
he took maybe like a little more convincing, but at the same time, they've been really proud of me. Also, when I told him that I feel like God's calling me to ministry, he was like, "Oh, okay." And I said, "But I could have a doctor of theology." And he's like, "That'll do."
Oh
So
my goodness.
one day we'll get there.
Yeah, absolutely. And did you have friends that were supporting you and walking alongside you, or were you involved in a small group or anything?
Yeah. So when I moved here to Windsor, the young adult group here, that. The guy and his wife who were the pastors of this program, they became my first friends.
Oh,
And
nice.
it was it was actually so sweet that like we led together here. So I was on his leadership team and he was also on my Red Frogs team. So we
Okay.
just had this like friendship and partnership in ministry in the city. Like it was just really cool.
That's so good. And thinking of anyone who is listening today, do you have a word of encouragement for women who are listening who have a yes on their hearts, but are faced with amplified voices saying no?
Mm.
And what can they do to keep rising to their calling, right? Amidst all, adversity and all that's happening in their lives. And what should they surround themselves with?
Yeah, I'd say like number one, get to know the voice of God with clarity and
Mm,
just really like hear what his voice is, know what his character is and what his voice sounds like, what he would say within his character. He'll never say anything outside of his character. So just get to know him on that kind of intimate level so that
mhm.
when he says go, it's him and it's not anyone else. Or when
Yeah.
he says do, it's him and not anyone else. Because your friends are going to love you. Your community is going to, support you, want the best for you. But at the same time, they're not God. And sometimes they don't understand what it is that God's calling you to, because only God sees the end result, the end picture. And he knows what you're capable of and what he's capable of doing through you. So yeah, just listen to God's voice, and maybe pray the prayer of the 16-year-old me that said, God, open one door, close all the others, make it so obvious that I can't mess this up. It's worked for me.
Yeah.
So,
I love that prayer. And did somebody tell you it, or did you come up with that on your own?
I kind of just came up with it on my own, realizing that if God's the only one who can open doors that no one else can open and close doors that no one else can close, which is scripture, then he could do that in my life.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so, what would you say is a practical step that someone could even take, right, to move forward, to say that yes?
Just spend time in prayer.
Yeah.
Like, prayer is so big, reading the Bible so big, worship so big, but prayer, that's direct access to God. So whether it's like you're coming to God with the same things over and over and over again, just do it. Because he doesn't get annoyed hearing from us. You can tell him the same thing over and over, and he just actually delights in spending time with you. So yeah, that'd be my encouragement. Just pray.
Yeah. That's fantastic, Nelly. Thank you so much. I love your passion for your ministry and all that you do and the way that God has called you, right? And you've stepped out into that calling. That's amazing.
It's been a journey. It's been a lot of fun. It's taken a lot of trust, let me tell you.
Yes. Because now what's your role now again? You are a pastor.
Yes. So I am pastoring. I'm still a missionary, and I run a house, so house director. And within those 3 big hats, there's some other roles that come along with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you support yourself, like you do ministry, like it's mission work, really, right?
Yes.
So learning to get support and all of that, that's a whole different ballgame, isn't it?
Exactly. I make the joke that I pastor as my side hustle to support my ministry on campus. Because that's kind of how it's working at this point.
Oh my goodness.
But
Yeah, well, I love your heart for the young adults because they need somebody in their life who's going to pour into them during those years, right? As they're finding their identity in Christ and who they are, and just to be reminded of that every day so they don't forget. And so we don't lose them as part of the body of Christ.
Right.
Yeah.
It's such a special time. It's where a character is really not just developed, but lived out. So, they've grown up with parents and they've been maybe at church and have been taught so-and-so, but now is actually the time to live it out. Are you going to choose to go to church when your parents aren't taking you, when you actually have to maybe bus for 45 minutes to get across the city to the place that you want to worship? Or are you just going to choose to sleep in? Like, these are real choices in these moments for young adults. So,
yeah. And so how do you encourage somebody if they're wrestling through that?
I'd say they have choices to make, and no one can make their choices for them. So if they're choosing to worship God by making those sacrifices, God always honors faithfulness. And so even in the season where it's like, this is a tedious thing to wake up so much earlier to get to church. Okay, well, God will honor your faithfulness. You will see the difference, not in like a prosperity gospel kind of way, but you will see the difference in your life because you're sacrificing, and God honors faithfulness.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love your directness. And I'm sure that they must appreciate it too, right? Because they do need to hear that at that time. Well, again, Nelly, thank you so much for being on the Gather Women podcast. It's exciting to meet you and to chat with you and to go through these questions and hear a little bit about your story. And we'll put links in the show notes for anybody who is looking to contact you. And again, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Global Aid Network dreams of a world with flourishing communities where people are thriving in all aspects of their life. Since beginning in 1998, GAIN has mobilized resources to help people in over 49 countries around the world, most of which have been women and children. The suffering of women and children produces an immediate heart cry in most people worldwide. When a child remains in need, not only is their present life, but also their future is subjected to heartache. Emotional trauma caused by suffering can gouge a deep scar in children, stunting their ability to give and receive love and belief that they are precious creations with significant roles to play in their nation's future. at the same time, women of all ages often live in years of generational poverty or are treated as second class, and more especially during times of natural disasters and humanitarian crisis. As a result, two of GAIN's core strategies are focused on women and young girls. The Water for Life initiative in economic empowerment, by helping to improve the physical health of communities, encourage healthy communication, and foster an environment of respect for women, as well as empowering and equipping women with the skills and confidence to participate in and run incoming earning activities. GAIN hopes to see a world of flourishing communities where women and girls are able to thrive in all aspects of their lives. This Christmas, if you would like to impact the lives of more women, go to globalaid.net/catalog. For those joining us today, I hope that you were encouraged by my conversation with Nelly and her heart for young adults. To connect with Nelly, check out our show notes. In those show notes, we'll post links and helpful resources that were mentioned today. Remember to subscribe on your podcast app. And for those watching the video edition, subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you don't miss an episode. Also, hop onto the discussion by following us on social media. You can find us on Instagram at GatherWomen or online at gatherwomen.com. Be sure to join our subscriber list to find out how you can join the hundreds of women across Canada who are just like you, wanting to connect for mutual encouragement and leadership influence. Looking forward to next time. Thanks for joining us.